Thank you for coming to our joint case study presentation today. Show of thumbs, how we feeling about the event? ViVE, yeah?
Good, huh?
Wow, that is a lot of thumbs up. Well, thank you for coming. My name is Patrick Shiess. I'm the president and CISO, that's Chief Information Security Officer for Darena Solutions. I'm joined on the stage today with John Valutkevich,
Yes.
who is the Director of Programs for the Drummond Group.
Happy to be here.
Thank you so much. Darena and Drummond have a very long history, and we're very honored to be sharing the stage today to talk about a very awesome way that Drummond is leveraging our flagship product, MeldRx, to do FHIR app testing. So before we get into the case study, I want to give you a little bit of background about our company and our products and talk about how it works. Then I'm going to toss it over to John, and he's going to share the amazing things that Drummond's doing to instill confidence in the people that are going to be using these smart apps. All right, next slide. Oh, wait, that's me. All right. So Darena Solutions is a software solutions company. It's been around about 15 years, of which I learned today that all 15 years we've been involved with Drummond in some way since our inception. So it's actually quite the love story that we're telling up here on this case study. But based in St. Louis area, just outside in a little town called Chesterfield, and our main products, our first one is Blue Button Pro. Blue Button Pro is the gold medal winner for the very first G10 ONC certified solution, actually by Drummond, if you can imagine. We have My MIPS Score, which is a MIPS product that helps clinicians and providers do their annual MIPS submission to the government. And then we have our baby, my absolute favorite, MeldRx, and that's what we're going to focus on today. Okay? MeldRx is a platform for healthcare app developers to build, test, and launch their apps. And I think before we jump into the specifics, I want to do something with the crowd here, okay? I want you to close your eyes. Close them, all right? And I want you to picture a developer. What do they look like? What's their name, maybe? Who do they work for? And I want you to, all right, this is great. I wish the camera could see. Everybody's eyes are closed. Great, now open them and keep that in mind, and let's see what we got. That's the wrong way. Okay, when we talk about developers, this can mean a lot of different things, and it might not be what you're thinking of. So when we talk about developers, this could be individuals who are writing code. This could be a team of people that are sitting in a room cranking it out or sitting remotely and building applications, which is awesome. But it could also be EHRs. It could be pharma. It could be researchers. It could be anybody that has an awesome idea and is trying to share it with the world, or they're trying to solve problems. And so when we built MeldRx, we wanted to build a platform that is built for and by developers to solve problems for them, to make the whole story of, well, I've got this awesome idea for an app, but what am I going to do with it? I tried to implement some standards and it fell on its face, and I don't have the energy or anything to continue. We wanted to find a way to address that and really appeal to the application developers, regardless of what they look like. Remember that one that you were picturing a couple seconds ago in your head? Maybe it looks like something on here, maybe not. So this thing, MeldRx, is at its core a FHIR API repository. Like, that's one of the biggest, like, most quintessential features of MeldRx. So if you wanted to today, you could go to meldrx.com and register for an account and get 5 free FHIR servers, like, with zero cost. Like, you can get that with MeldRx. And this is actually the exact same platform that we have certified with Drummond and we're using with our Blue Button Pro customers to help them get their EHR certification. And if you have any interest in that, definitely stop by our booth 2424 and we can chat about that. But it's so much more than just FHIR. I think FHIR is, as a standard, incredible. It's a great way to represent and to exchange clinical data. But there's so much more that we need to think about. And as a healthcare app developer, it's very common that You have the idea, you're trying to think about, what is it going to take for me to navigate all of these different pathways and, crank something out that's awesome. But then you start thinking about security. And MailDirectX comes equipped with a very robust identity and access management platform that solves the problem of Smart on FHIR. And like, how are we going to give people access to certain or authorization to certain pieces of data or resources or anything like that? And MailDirectX makes that happen. Now, this is kind of a fun one, and I'll tell you, because we're all friends here, right? We also have a data vault. And the data vault is a pretty cool concept because not only can it just store data, it can store lots of different types of data, especially in healthcare. I mean, aside from things like faxes and some of these more traditional ways, there's a lot of different ways that you can send and receive healthcare data. We're talking XML and JSON and CCDAs and FHIR and everything under the sun. We wanted to build a platform that was flexible enough to be able to handle all of this different type of data, or these types of data, I think is the proper way to say it. So we have the MailDirectX Data Vault. And one thing that's very unique, and I'll spoil it just a little bit for you, but I'll talk about it on the next one. We also have the ability to give you a place to write clinical data if you wanted to send it to an EHR later, but it's not available to write to an EHR now. You can actually write that to our MailDirectX Data Vault, and we'll talk about that in just a second. And the final component of MailDirectX is apps. And I think apps are really the reason that a lot of these discussions happen. I think the 21st Century Cures Act says that, what was the date? December 31st or January 1st, 2023. Every single healthcare provider must be able to provide their health records to patients in the FHIR format so that they can use it in an app of their choosing, right? And I think the sharing of data and the access to the data is pretty good, and it's becoming a lot more mature. But where are we on the apps part? Like, what is it that's stopping us from being able to go to our dentist or whatever and ask for our health records, and they don't try to send us a fax for it, right? So we need to find a way to help people bridge that gap and put those apps out there and find a way to make them trustworthy, right? Nice plug there. So that people can use them with confidence. So let's talk about just a little high-level overview of how this works, and then I'll pass it off to John. So all of those components that we talked about on the last slide, I'll just back it up. So you remember APIs, identity and access management, data storage, and apps. We take all of them and we package it into what's known as a workspace. And a workspace is pretty much a fancy way of saying it's a FHIR server, FHIR API, right? But it's so much more. There's so much more capabilities there, and we'll talk about it. So let's say that you're building an app and you want to get data from Epic. All right, that should be easy enough. I'll just build a connection to Epic. All right, requirements change. Now I need data not only from Epic, but from Cerner and Athena and NextGen and Veradigm, and you name it, the list goes on and on and on. That becomes exceptionally hard for developers to build, to keep up to spec, and to make sure that as they're maintaining these connections, that nothing's changed. And the amount of time and effort that it takes for people to do that is absolutely overwhelming. But let's think about it a different way. If all of these can talk FHIR and MailDirectX can talk FHIR, what if we just took care of those connections for you? That way, instead of worrying about, okay, what's this very specific way that I need to integrate with Cerner? What's this very specific way that I need to, integrate with XYZ? You only had to integrate with one thing, and that's your MailDirectX workspace. And then you can start building out these awesome FHIR applications that are going to change the world. Are we there? Yeah? Okay. So that's essentially what we're trying to enable with MailDirectX is we want to make the application development process, the integration process easier for people so that they can focus on their ideas and changing the world and not getting bogged down with all the details. So just to highlight some of the benefits, I did mention that you can go sign up on MailDirectX.com today and get a FHIR-ready sandbox, 5 free workspaces at completely no cost. There's a little bit of service limits in there, but we think that they're pretty reasonable for people to get in and start, building their apps, which is really what we want to try to promote and encourage from people. You can connect all of the different EHRs and really start to decrease all of that footprint and burden of how much you have to support. This is the build versus buy decision, and we'd love to be a part of it with you. So, speaking of being a part of things with people, I'm going to pass it off here to John, and he's going to talk about the amazing work that they are doing with the FHIR app Health Check.
Great. Thank you, Patrick. Yeah. I'm a control freak. I'm going to take this. So as Patrick sort of teed up, right, from a perspective of looking at the FHIR apps, we're really pleased with the relationship and partnership we have with MELDRx. He mentioned build versus buy decision. I'll get into that a little bit more. So just again, to transition, for those of you that don't know Drummond, we're booth 2338, right next to these guys here. You may know us probably most famously as an ONC ACB. And the leader in the marketplace, as you can see there, with the amount of certifications we do. So all of the large and small EHRs come through Drummond for ONC certification. It makes sense that from around that, there are HIPAA compliance services. We've been doing SOC and PCI services for almost 20 years, in addition to AS2 certification. And with that, cybersecurity, penetration testing, and surrounding, depending on where you are in product maturity, advisory services as well. So again, we're pleased to, again, have MELDRx and the Darena team as one of our customers. And I think that helped lead us to our decision point, which was a build versus buy. So when you think about this FHIR client and testing certification program, this is brand new, folks. We're in with early throes of piloting it, launching it into the marketplace. And this is targeted to FHIR app developers. And why? What are we doing here? Given our customer base, we had the benefit to talk to a lot of EHR developers and some app developers and even payers. And we looked at, to Patrick's point, so what's the problem in terms of FHIR adoption and the complexity that has to do with an app of your choosing? That app of your choosing, coupled with information blocking requirements, basically it's been a free-for-all as an app developers hitting the EHRs. So if I'm putting on my EHR developer hat, which again is my background prior to joining Drummond, some 20 years, is EHR developers historically, HL7 2X, 3X, demands for data, interfaces. Now, with the explosion of FHIR apps, 21st Century Cures Act, opening up your data to share it even in more broader ways, there's been an increased demand in the EHR community, especially if you're a rich data source. And Patrick name-dropped a number of those that the handlers within MELDRx are built into. Those are the guys that have the data. If I'm an app developer, I sure want mine to work with the larger EHRs. It only makes sense. So think about that. Then there is, depending on the acumen of a FHIR app developer, the onboarding is not that seamless. Yes, of course, the implementation guides have been pretty well vetted. Everybody knows, based on ONC specifications for both CMS and for EHR customers, you know what the IGs are supposed to be. I can dovetail off the prior presentation from Tim Bennett from Drummond about the fact that there is challenges with how implementation guides get interpreted. So there's significant time to onboard. That does drain resources. And when I say drain resources, think about this as well. The support matrix and requirements that are involved to entertain and troubleshoot and onboard and set up. You're not hiring FHIR developer resources off the street. These are expensive resources within the walls of payers, within the walls of EHRs, to be able to determine and fix problems, troubleshoot, and do some onboarding. And then finally, I'll use this term a little bit loosely here, but there's nothing to prevent any Tom, Dick, and Harry from creating a little FHIR app in the garage on their phone. But what's the use case? Right now, because of information blocking, the EHR at least has to provide some limited information to onboard them. So there's a lot of clarity that needs to come out of the use cases. Let's turn that on its head. If you've ever browsed an app store from a major vendor, or even Amazon Web Services or Microsoft, no disservice to them, but if you search on cardiology app, how many hits do you get? Which one do you choose? It's pretty confusing out there. So there's that side of it. Now let's put on my little app developer hat. A couple of challenges for them as well. If I'm an app developer right now, if I want to integrate with an Epic or a Cerner or a Meditech, I have to do the same thing 3 different times. Whether it is slightly at will, some EHR vendors require more effort to get listed. It's a repetitive process. I'm probably on the smaller side as an app developer, and I have tied up, again, an expensive resource or resources plural going through and doing the same type of testing. Here's the problem. And again, Patrick alluded to this, and Tim alluded to this earlier as well. You will encounter what we classify broadly as implementation bias. The shall versus should statements within an implementation guide. Everybody interpret those that you might find some consistency across a couple of EHRs, across some payers, but you're not going to find consistency across a lot of them. So the process gets slowed down. The app developers, much like the EHRs or the payers, they have drained resources. And what that turns around into is due to, again, I'll use Patrick's words, app of your choosing, coming right out of the ONC handbook. The point of the matter is, if you're an app developer and you're trying to connect to a rich data source, you're competing with a whole bunch of other app developers that want to do the same thing. And maybe they're even in the same product line that you are. So your go-to market strategy and timeline is going to be compromised. And it's really nobody's fault. It's just the way the things are right now. So start to think about, is there a way to differentiate that, cut through some of the noise? So real quickly, if we look at a rough TAM of the applications that are considered FHIR apps that are clinical in nature, these include payers, these include research, include the ones that connect to the EHR. If we look at the Journal of American Medical Information Association publication that they did from ONC about 3 weeks back, they had a raw number of about 700 apps just for EHRs. We tammed that out a little bit further and looked at the payer community and the specialty app community, the research, any rich data source. You got 1,000+ legitimate apps. I'm not necessarily talking about the Fitbit little thing or all these other things that are on the smartphone. These are the ones that really have to be integrated because they affect and hopefully improve workflows for a payer, workflows for an EHR developer. So you have that community. And then, as was mentioned a little bit earlier, there's some industry validation. Okay, you can go to an HL7 Connectathon, an IHE Connectathon, and those have their merits, but they're limited in what you're testing. I've been to many an IHE Connectathon, and as you know, you're only paired with 3 or 4 vendors. And you're coding on the fly, you're fixing things, and those are placebo-type test systems, let's face it. But there's value and merit in doing that. Let's whittle it down even further. And this is, again, what the app developers are facing in terms of repetitive testing. Most of the EHR community and the payer community is going to want to at least take a look at your app. So they're going to vet you even a little bit further. So what we're getting to in the end there is, how could we stand up something? And again, we've had an opportunity here to make a build versus buy decision. And based on everything Patrick has told you about the MelDirect's platform, we needed a certified reference server as part of our environment to set up a FHIR client testing and application certification program. This we believe is a differentiator. So as you look at quickly the program benefits of a FHIR client application. So how about just demonstrating conformance? Okay. If we have had the history that we have had, 20 years in conformance and interoperability testing, going way back to the AS2 days, to meaningful use, 1, 2, and 3, Cures Act, and the advantage we have of the large customer base, we know from a Drummond perspective what we're doing when it comes to certification and software compliance. So our seal means something. Our supported client list means something in the industry. So you have that. Then think about building trust in the client app. These apps, they have to sell out into their marketplace. Now, I won't pretend that every physician and clinician in the community knows the name Drummond. But what if, and this conversation is occurring right now, these app stores that EHR vendors are hosting and all, you can start to differentiate, and you can have a symbol in that app store that this particular app is Drummond certified. So you have that going for you. Increased confidence, obviously, for end users and clinicians and payers is important. Also about efficiencies. We're looking at, if you go through the Drummond environments and you hit a number of different reference servers, then I can borrow from ONC rules and regulations as it relates to real world testing and actually create an environment that's not just a one and done, you show up with sample data. Okay, our program is we're leveraging the main programs like Cynthia. We're leveraging the complexities that are in the Darena MeldRx solution to be able to have a nice UI and client secret and registration and tracking mechanisms to put you through those paces. So if I'm an app developer and I go through this particular program with a robust infrastructure that we have in MeldRx across reference servers, then I can say to a Cerner or a Meditech or an Allscripts or an eClinicalWorks, you name it, I have street cred. Also, too, is, well, I'm already in maybe the Epic store, for instance. You now reduce the burden again for the payers and for the EHRs because we base this certification program on the same other programs that we do for the EHRs. And that is, it's mandated that we do surveillance. We check in to see that, as Patrick had mentioned too, this is a dynamic environment. So things change. And it's tough, especially for smaller app developers, to keep on top of all the rule changes from CMS, ONC, and Health and Human Services. That's what we do at Drummond. So you have an additional opportunity to work with us throughout the year. You certify with us, you get a year's worth of support with that, and you're going to maintain that certification and be up to speed. And that, again, reduces burden. So it's a differentiator there as well. Reducing implementation bias. You're now going to be able to level set. I spent 15 years supporting HL7, 2X, and 3X interfaces, and it is forever a finger pointing game. Well, my side should be working. It must be your side. No, your side's not working. Okay, we've been through that before. So now, what if you were to baseline, and when things do break in the interface world, which they always do, you have some sort of proof point to sit on that your application is reputable. It's a good actor. We do take it one step further, and this is that competitive advantage team. Okay, in addition to traditional certification, checking the implementation guides and the technology works, we also pull a page out of our testing and certification that goes all the way back to 2011. And that is, we look at the UI. Here's the important part, is I can connect, I can use Smart on FHIR, and again, we did the buy decision. We let Darena take care of all of that. But we have to test all those things. We have to know that's working. And then what do you do with the data? Are you a good actor? You've read data in, okay? There's been situations out there that I'm sure you've heard of or read about that codified data, meds, allergies, and problems need to end up in the same codified spot in the patient record on the app side. So that's where we're looking at that. All right. Lastly, in conjunction with MeldRx, we're featuring their platform both in their booth and ours. Is right now we're running a free app health check. If you have an app and I just need very simplistic data like a redirect URL and what scopes you might support, at least initially, we can onboard you right in our Drummond booth and have you connect and build out an app client secret, and you can launch your client right here at ViVE and go through a first pass. An initial doesn't cost you anything, give you an initial evaluation, and we're happy to follow up post after that. So I will pause there, Patrick. You got your own.
Yeah, test. All right, yeah. So thank you, John, and we are going to open up for some question and answer, and after we're done with that, I think what they're having us do is pick everybody up and move us to the booths, and then we'll do the demos.
Any follow up? If anybody has any interest, we can certainly entertain that as well.
All right, and there may be a prize if you ask a question. There may be. I'm not saying there will be. I'm not saying there won't be.
Patrick's got drink tickets.
That's right, drink tickets. What do we got?
Any questions at all? It's okay if you don't. If you're shy, Patrick and our booths are right here.
Right here. All right. Eric, CTO of ZPaper. Nice. The question was, how many apps have been through this and how long did it take?
So we're working with 3 pilots right now. So it took a little while, and here's why. Implementation bias and implementation guides. So standard reference server. When I say a little while, when things were up and running and the Cynthia data was cleansed, the reference server was pretty much power on, she's good to go. So post that, it was about a month and a half to have the applications work on some of their tweaks because, and I'll call it implementation bias. But, and that is as we expected and what we've heard from the EHR and some of the payers that have opened up and are entertaining apps as well. It's like the app may be calling the same subset of US CDI data. Of course, they can do Smart on FHIR. Of course, they can authenticate, do the read. But in terms of calling out the right data elements, we found that there was some inconsistencies. So, but what we have from the Drummond group together with Darena here is we have surrounded that with support services. So even if you're in the early stages of just thinking about it, or you've taken it so far, we have last mile opportunities between the both of us to get your app to the goal line there and live.
All right, everybody give Eric a round of applause for that question. It was really good. You've won a free product demo and a bunny. Yeah. Excellent. All right, who else we got? Over here? I saw somebody with their hand up. Maybe just put your hand up and like give me a wave. Tell me you're alive. No?
So
You don't want to wave at me? That's fine. All right, we'll just move over here. Right here, HL7. Okay.
yeah. Correct.
Yeah, really good question. Let's rephrase it
Yep.
for the studio audience at home.
Right.
So the question was, is it about testing different types of like references, or is it about testing different types of providers, or like what is it that we're actually trying to validate at scale?
Yeah. At scale, it is testing the FHIR app client itself. The users obviously may have, depending on the flexibility of the app, the input points may be different. But in terms of, we are wholeheartedly working with a one-to-one relationship with the vendor of the app, if they have more than one product, obviously. But we, as we have done in the EHR industry, would offer a seal of approval to that particular app and that particular version. There is, and it raises a really good point, because in the dynamic world of software implementations, versions change rather frequently. So we've built in, and we're borrowing from our long career in software certification, things like attestations and all. You don't necessarily have to come back and retest, for instance, if minor functionality changes. But the benefit, and this is, again, what we bring to the table from the Drummond perspective, we pull right out of ONC's book about what's considered a major or a minor software change, and how would it affect the end game that might be the EHR endpoint or the payer point, and determine with the client whether retesting is required or not. So there's this playbook that we're used to from the Drummond perspective about, it's great to test an IG, but what about what happens over time as things change? And every software developer and app puts different changes into their application that may or may not require a full-fledged recertification, or you just come back for a demo test, or you just fill out some attestation documentation there. So that's an excellent question. Thank you for that.
All right, let's hear it for Diego. You also have won a free product demo and a bunny. All right, we have time for one more question. Okay, just one. Who's it gonna be? Who's it gonna be? Questions? Everybody's like looking down. Don't choose me. No? Okay, if there are no further questions, I want to thank you again so much for coming out to this particular Interop Now Pavilion talk.
Yep. And feel, like I said, Patrick's on point, I'm on point, our booths are right next to each other. Happy to walk you through a demo if that's something you want to see, you want to think about it. We're here right to the bitter end tomorrow, because we all love ViVE. So please consider it. And these demos, team, we can do them virtually. If it's something that, geez, I'd like a follow-up or I'd like a discussion, these are things that we've prepared right now to do on demand virtually as well. In addition, we'll be showcasing it at HIMSS. So cheers. Thanks for coming, team.
Thank you so much.